So what can you tell us about today's meeting? What is on your agenda today?
Today's meeting is one of our regular meetings. First time our board has met in Latvia. We're all very pleased to be in Riga and hosted by airBaltic, one of our leading airlines that's demonstrated that all the things that the European Commission wanted from liberalisation, airBaltic's achieved. It's brought wealth to the region, superb range of services, and today we're going to be discussing the threats to the future of air transport in Europe.
How should we take it that you're here in Riga? Should we take it as a big honor, or we have just achieved some kind of level where we are on the big map of airlines?
No, I think to take it as a big honor is not the right thing. To take it as a pleasure to be here, and for many of our presidents to visit Riga for the first time, to see the operation of airBaltic. Yeah, they're excited to be here.
I heard about 3 important things that you are going to talk about today. One of them was about volcanoes eruption and that kind of things. So what are your plans on this issue?
Well, when we had the volcanic eruption at the beginning of last year, this caused major disruption throughout the whole of Europe. And what happened was many airlines had to cease operation, particularly those in North and West Europe, and we had to pay enormous amounts of money to passengers on flights that were cancelled. Now, those were effects that were outside our control as an industry, but we had unlimited liability for passengers, and the passenger compensation and assistance regulation within the European Union is disproportionate. You can't hold airlines liable for acts of God. So we want to see that regulation changed to make it more practical, more reasonable, and more proportionate. We already had many years ago the terrible events of Chernobyl when the whole of airspace was shut down. We had 911 when the airspace was shut down. We've got to have a regulation that takes account and doesn't impose immediate liability on the airlines when these are events outside our control. If we cancel a flight because we've gone technically unserviceable, that's different.
What are you going to do about it? Are you going to
We have complained strongly to the European Commission that they have to change this regulation, and that's now been accepted by the Commission that they've got to look at it. But Brussels works very slowly, and it will probably take at least a year for them to formulate an alternative proposal. But we will be there pushing to make sure that they do.
What about the tax issues?
The tax issues are serious because the European Commission, European Union, are looking at sources of revenue to relieve governments of the responsibility for having to pay for climate change protection measures in developing countries and for the costs of the European Commission itself. And one of the options that they're looking at is a tax on aviation. Now, we feel that enough is enough. We pay enormous amounts of tax throughout Europe, and this is going to be something that should not fall on the shoulders of airlines or their passengers. In a summit, an aviation summit that took place in Bruges before Christmas, the Commissioner for Transport himself said we must stop looking at air transport as a cow to be milked for money. So we want to support the Commissioner in that and say that we don't want another aviation tax on our passengers. We're a tool. Aviation, air transport, airlines are a tool for the development of a state. And Latvia should know that more than any state. If you put more and more financial burdens on airlines, you are going to reduce the ability of airlines to stimulate Europe's economy.
But is it possible to stop this tax thing, or people should already be saving money for traveling
Oh,
in the
no.
air?
This is not a decided issue yet. So we have to make sure that all of our board members, all of our airline members throughout Europe, our manufacturers, all of us work together to have a collective interest to say, if you want to raise money for this, look somewhere else. Don't look at air transport.
And what about the terrorism threats?
The terrorism threats, first of all, I would want to say how sorry everybody in the air transport system is for the dreadful attacks in Moscow a few days ago. We all are hurt when something like that happens. It's not just Moscow itself, and it was a tragedy. But it's very, very hard for any society to protect itself against a suicide bomber. We've seen the suicide bombing attacks in London, on the London Underground and buses. What we have to do with this latest incident, we will look at it, we will see what could have been done, what can be done, but society has to keep on working. And we have to make sure that whatever solutions we come up with still allow people to travel. And people want to travel. That's why the demand for air transport is increasing. What we have to do is see what measures can be put in place, and one of those measures is going to be the much greater sharing of intelligence information between national security agencies. That's one of our biggest sources of detection of threat.
What does it mean for a passenger? Will he or she be more checked when going to fly somewhere?
Well, this attack did not occur in an area of outbound passengers. This occurred in an arrivals area where people were meeting and greeting. Now, if you say, well, they're not going to allow them inside the terminal, we move them out, there's still going to be people will stay outside and meet and greet. There's still the threat there. And it's very hard to see how that can be absolutely guaranteed to be safe.
What do you see for the traveling in the year in the future? What will happen? Will it become more expensive? Will it become less expensive? Will it become more threatening? Is it going to be more safe? Will it be more difficult to travel around because of the safety issues or not?
No,
in nearest 5 years, 3 years?
In the next 5 years, the European Union has a target of increasing the capacity of the air transport system to meet public demand for increasing air travel. It has a target of improving safety. It has a target of reducing costs, improving the efficiency of the system. If we look at what's happened to fares in the last 15 years, there's been a continuous drop in fares. People can now travel at fare levels that were undreamt of 20 years ago. Now, that can't go on forever, but I do think that the process itself will get easier. The European Commission has already said we want to get rid of the checks on liquids. We're looking at new technology for security checks going through the system with body scanners. It's going to cost money, but if it makes the system more efficient, if it increases our capacity, it improves our security, that is something that we will have to accept. I see air travel as meeting a public demand that just does not have a limit at the moment.
What would you see as a major issue for today's meeting? Maybe 2 or 3 issues, which could later could you introduce in your European Commission as a legislation initiative or change?
Well, we want to make sure that as a general theme throughout our meeting, that all decisions that are made in Brussels do not just concentrate on the core area of Europe, in the, shall we say, the corridor from Brussels down to Zurich, but takes account of regional interests. It probably comes as a shock to many people to recognize that out of the 500 million population of Europe, 85% of those people live in the regions of Europe, not in the capital cities. So we want to make sure, whether we're talking in terms of charges that are put on us or airspace capacity, that decisions that are made in Brussels take better account of the interests of Europe's regions. What airBaltic has achieved here shows that all of the things that were set up for liberalization of the industry, you can deliver. You have a superb range of services out of Riga. And we want to make sure that there are no restrictions placed on those. One of the issues that will be addressed today is a thing called slot allocation, how you allow aeroplanes into congested hubs.
Can you explain that one more time?
Well, we have,
That's
as
the
you
issue
would
for today.
recognize, one of the issues for today, we have to recognize that there are some key airports in Europe that are becoming more and more congested. And airlines go into those congested airports based upon the schedules that they had in the previous season. And it has to be coordinated to make sure that the system works. The European Commission wants to revise the regulation that controls all of that. We are concerned that in any revision, you don't make it a situation where the airline with the biggest pockets buys the capacity, because that could result in long-haul airlines operating wide-body equipment from way out of Europe, America, the Far East, that they are able to buy the right to operate at congested hubs, whereas the smaller airlines that don't have such deep pockets could be forced out. And that's not good for Europe's regions. You need to have access to places like Frankfurt and Heathrow and Paris-Charles de Gaulle and Munich. So we want to make sure there is a balance there and not a question of airlines with the biggest pockets win.
Okay. When they're planning to discuss this in Europe?
The Commission is expecting to come out with a new proposal in certainly the first half of this year. And we want to make sure that our members who supply services from Europe's regions are not excluded by a commission that, quite frankly, does not know as much about the industry and can't be expected to know as much about the industry as we do.
Okay.
Are you the only organization that fights for the
No. There is another airline association which
This is
deals with the major carriers like Lufthansa, British Airways, Air
This
France.
is regional,
This is intra-European.
intra-European.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
You're a
Thank
great
you.
Also, one
friend.
question you said about taxes. What is the main